Amara had always believed that kindness was a currency that would one day pay her back. It never did. She drove through the rain that night with her hands tight on the wheel, her daughter asleep in the back seat, and her mind churning through numbers that never added up. The hospital bill, the rent, the loan shark who'd called twice that day, his voice like gravel scraping against her last thread of hope. She was 32 years old and felt like she'd lived 3 lifetimes, each one harder than the last. The highway stretched ahead, black and slick under the storm. Lightning split the sky. Thunder rolled through her chest. And then she saw him, a man, collapsed on the shoulder of the road. His body twisted at an unnatural angle, one arm stretched toward the asphalt as if reaching for something he'd lost. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading. The rain washed it away in thin rivers, but more came, always more. Amora's foot hovered over the gas pedal. She should keep driving. She knew she should. This was not her problem. This was danger, written in blood and shadow. But her hands turned the wheel before her mind could stop them. She pulled over, the car's headlights cutting through the rain to illuminate his face. He was young, younger than she expected. Maybe 35, maybe less. His features were sharp, carved from something harder than flesh. Even unconscious, even bleeding, he looked like a man who commanded rooms without speaking. His suit was expensive, ruined now by rain and blood, and his breathing was shallow, labored. Amora stepped out into the storm. The rain soaked through her jacket in seconds. She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she pressed them against the wound in his side. The blood was warm, sticky. It pulsed against her palms. "Stay with me," she whispered, though he couldn't hear her. "Please stay with me." She didn't know why she said it. She didn't know him. But something in his stillness made her think of all the times she'd wanted someone to say the same to her. She dragged him to her car. He was heavy, far heavier than he looked, and her arms screamed with the effort. Her daughter woke, crying, asking what was happening. Amara told her to close her eyes. She told her everything would be okay, even though she didn't believe it herself. She drove to the only place she could think of, a clinic on the outskirts of the city, run by a man who asked no questions because he'd learned long ago that questions cost more than silence. The doctor looked at the man on her back seat and then at Amara, his eyes sharp with something between pity and warning. "You don't know what you've done," he said. But Amara was already too far in to turn back. The doctor worked through the night. Amara sat in the waiting room, her daughter curled against her side, both of them shivering from the cold. She watched the clock on the wall tick forward, each second heavier than the last. She thought about leaving. She thought about running. But something kept her there, something she couldn't name. When the doctor finally emerged, his hands were clean but his face was grim. "He'll live," he said. "But you need to leave. Now." Amara didn't ask why. She didn't need to. The danger was in the air, thick and suffocating. She took her daughter's hand and turned toward the door. And then she heard his voice. "Wait." It was rough, broken, but it cut through the room like a blade. She turned. He was awake, sitting up despite the doctor's protests, his eyes locked on hers. They were dark, almost black, and they held her in place. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Giving him her name felt like stepping off a cliff. "Amora," she said finally. He nodded, as if committing it to memory. "Amora." The way he said it made her shiver. "Go home," he told her. "Forget this happened." She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But as she drove away, her daughter asleep again in the back seat, she felt the weight of his gaze lingering on her skin. She felt the shift in the air, the sense that something had changed, something irreversible. She had no idea how right she was. Before we go on, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. The next day, Amara tried to forget. She went to work, her hands moving through the motions of her job at the diner, saving coffee and eggs to people who never looked her in the eye. She picked up her daughter from school, helped her with homework, tucked her into bed. She moved through her life like a ghost, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped that night. The sound of engines woke her. Not one, but many. A low, rumbling growl that shook the walls of her small apartment. She went to the window, her heart pounding, and pulled back the curtain. The street below was blocked. Black SUVs lined the curb, the headlights cutting through the darkness. Men in suits stood beside them, their faces hidden in shadow, their postures rigid and watchful. At the center of it all was a sleek black car, its engine purring like a predator. Amora's breath caught in her throat. The back door of the car opened, and he stepped out. He moved with the kind of ease that came from power, from knowing the world would bend to his will. His suit was pristine now, no trace of the blood that had soaked through it the night before. His face was calm, unreadable, but his eyes found her window as if he'd known exactly where she'd be. He looked up at her and smiled. Amora stumbled back from the window, her pulse racing. She thought about calling the police, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Men like him didn't fear the law. Men like him were the law, in their own way. A knock came at her door. Soft, deliberate, patient. She didn't answer. The knock came again. Her daughter stayed in the next room, mumbling in her sleep. Amora's hands clenched into fists. She walked to the door, her body moving on instinct, and opened it just a crack. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, his face expressionless. He didn't look at her. He looked past her, as if cataloging everything inside. "Mr. Kane would like to speak with you," he said. Amora's mouth went dry. "I don't know who that is." The man's eyes flicked to hers, just for a moment, and she saw the warning there. "Yes, you do." She did. Of course she did. She'd known the moment she saw the blood, the moment she saw the way the doctor's hands had trembled. She'd known, and she'd helped him anyway. "Tell him I'm not interested," she said, and started to close the door. The man's hand shot out, stopping it. His grip was firm, unyielding. "It's not a request." Amora's heart hammered in her chest. She thought of her daughter, asleep and safe for now. She thought of the life she'd built, fragile as it was. She thought of the man in the car below, waiting. 5 minutes, she said. The man nodded and stepped back. Amora grabbed her jacket and walked down the stairs, her legs unsteady. The night air was cold, biting against her skin. The men in suits watched her as she approached the car, their eyes tracking her every movement. The back door opened before she reached it. She hesitated, then climbed inside. He was there, sitting in the shadows, his face half lit by the glow of a street lamp. He looked at her the way a chess player looks at the board, calm, calculating, already 10 moves ahead. "Amara," he said, and again, the sound of her name in his mouth made her shiver. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He leaned forward, the light catching his eyes. "To thank you." She didn't believe him. "You could have sent a card." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "I don't do cards." "Then we're done, hey?" She reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped her. "You saved my life." She looked back at him. His expression was still calm, but there was something beneath it now, something raw. So now I owe you," he said, "and I always pay my debts." Amora shook her head. "I don't want anything from you." "That's not how this works." His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. She felt the weight of it, the inevitability. She'd stepped into his world the moment she pulled over on that highway, and now there was no stepping back. "I have a daughter," she said quietly. "I can't." "I know." His gaze didn't waver. "That's why you're going to let me protect you." The word hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. "Protect me from what?" she asked. He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "From the people who want to finish what they started." And just like that, the ground fell out from under her. Amora didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, replaying his words over and over until they lost all meaning. protect you. From the people who want to finish what they started. She'd asked him what he meant. He'd told her she didn't need to know yet. He'd told her to trust him. She didn't. But what choice did she have? The next morning, she sent her daughter to her mother's house. She lied, said there was a gas leak in the building, said it would only be a few days. Her mother had looked at her with that knowing, tired expression she always wore, the one that said she knew Amara was drowning but couldn't throw her a rope. Amara kissed her daughter's forehead and watched her go, feeling the distance between them stretch into something unbearable. When she returned to her apartment, he was already there. Not inside, he wasn't that bold, not yet, but outside, leaning against one of the black SUVs like he owned the street. He probably did. Men like him owned everything, in one way or another. He straightened when he saw her, his movements smooth and unhurried. "We need to talk." "We talked last night," she said, brushing past him. He followed. "Of course he did. You didn't listen." She stopped at her door, key in hand, and turned to face him. Up close, in the daylight, he looked different. Still dangerous, still sharp, but there were shadows under his eyes, lines around his mouth that hadn't been there before. Or maybe they had, and she just hadn't noticed. "I listened," she said. "I just don't care." His jaw tightened. "You should." "Why?" "Because you said so. Because the men who tried to kill me know your face now." The words hit her like a fist. She felt the air leave her lungs, felt the world tilt. "What?" "They saw you," he said, his voice flat, clinical. "On the highway. They saw you pull over. They saw you help me. And now they think you're leverage." Amora's hands shook. She forced them still. "That's not my problem." "It is now." She wanted to scream. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to rewind time and drive past him on that highway, leave him bleeding in the rain. But she couldn't. The past was done. The present was all she had. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice breaking. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the way his eyes softened just slightly. "I want to keep you alive." "Why?" "Because you kept me alive." It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. But it was all he was willing to give. He didn't ask her permission. He simply made it happen. Within hours, her apartment was no longer hers. Men in suits came and went, sweeping for bugs, installing cameras, reinforcing the locks. One of them, a wiry man with cold eyes, told her not to open the windows anymore. Another told her not to answer the door unless she checked the peephole first. They spoke to her like she was a child, like she didn't already know what danger looked like. Kane watched from the corner, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "This is insane," she said to him when the men finally left. "This is necessary." "I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to." She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was too heavy. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "How long?" "As long as it takes." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." She looked up at him, at the way he stood so still, so controlled. "What did you do to make them want you dead?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something dark, something old. "I existed." "That's not an answer either." "It's the only one you'll get." She hated him then, hated the way he spoke, the way he looked at her like she was something fragile and breakable, hated the way he'd walked into her life and shattered it without apology. But she didn't tell him to leave. The days blurred together. Amara went to Wyke, came home, existed in the space between. The men in suits became part of the scenery, silent and watchful. Kane came and went, sometimes staying for hours, sometimes only minutes. He never explained where he went or what he did. She stopped asking. At night, she lay awake and listened to the city outside her window, the sirens, the shouting, the hum of life that never stopped. She thought about her daughter, safe at her mother's house. She thought about the life she'd had before, the one where she was just another tired woman trying to survive. She missed it. God, she missed it. But she couldn't go back. One night, Kane arrived late. She was already in bed, half asleep, when she heard the knock. She thought about ignoring it, but something made her get up. She opened the door to find him standing there, his shirt untucked, his tie loose. He looked human. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked human. "Can I come in?" he asked. She should have said no. She should have slammed the door in his face. But instead, she stepped aside. He walked past her and sat on the couch, his elbows on his knees, his head bowed. She watched him from the doorway, unsure of what to do. "Long night?" she asked finally. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Something like that." She moved into the room, keeping her distance. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." "Then why are you here?" He looked up at her, and for the first time, she saw the cracks, the exhaustion, the weight. "Because I don't have anywhere else to go." The honesty of it shocked her. She sat down on the other end of the couch, leaving space between them. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. "I'm sorry," he said finally. She turned to him, surprised. "For what?" "For dragging you into this." She wanted to tell him it was okay. She wanted to tell him she understood. But she couldn't, because it wasn't okay, and she didn't understand. "Just keep me alive," she said instead. "That's all I ask." He nodded. "I will." And in that moment, she almost believed him. If this story has already found a place in your heart, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more stories that stay long after they end. The first time she saw him vulnerable was an accident. She'd come home early from work, her shift cut short because the diner was slow. She walked into her apartment, expecting it to be empty, and found him sitting at her kitchen table. His jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, and there was blood on his hands. Not his blood. She knew that instinctively. He looked up when she entered, his expression blank. "You're Eiley." She stared at the blood, at the way it stained his skin, dark and damning. "What did you do?" "My job." "Which is what, exactly?" He didn't answer. He stood, walked to the sink, and turned on the water. She watched as he scrubbed his hands, the blood swirling down the drain. He did it methodically, carefully, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. "You're a killer," she said quietly. He turned off the water and looked at her. "Yes." The honesty of it was worse than the lie would have been. She felt her stomach turn, felt the room spin. "Get out." "Amora." "Get out." He didn't move. "I can't." "Yes, you can. You can walk out that door and never come back. If I do that, you'll be dead by morning." The words hung in the air, cold and final. She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream. But deep down, she knew he was right. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "I hate you." "I know." "I hate that you did this to me." "I know." "I hate that I can't even leave." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, his eyes level with hers. "I'm sorry for all of it, but I won't let them hurt you." She looked at him, at the blood still faint under his nails, at the way his jaw was set with determination. "Why do you care?" "Because you cared first." And that, somehow, was enough. Amora stopped asking questions after that night. Not because she didn't want answers, but because she realized answers wouldn't change anything. Kane was a killer. He lived in a world of blood and shadows and debts paid with bullets. And she, by some cruel twist of fate, had become part of that world. She adapted. That's what people like her did. They adapted, survived, carried on. She went to work with one of Kane's men trailing her at a distance. She came home to an apartment that no longer felt like hers. She existed in a strange limbo between captivity and protection, never quite sure which side of the line she was on. Kane came every night now. Not always at the same time, not always for long, but always. He'd sit on her couch or stand by the window, a shadow in her periphery. Sometimes they talked. Mostly, they didn't. There was a comfort in the silence, in the way their presence filled the space without demanding anything from each other. She learned things about him in those silences. She learned that he took his coffee black, no sugar, that he didn't sleep much, maybe 3 or 4 hours a night, that he read old books, philosophy mostly, the kind with worn covers and dog-eared pages. She learned that he was careful with his words, that he measured each one before he spoke, like language was a weapon he didn't want to misuse. She learned that he was lonely. He never said it. He'd probably never admit it. But she saw it in the way his shoulders relaxed when he walked into her apartment, in the way his eyes softened when she handed him a cup of coffee without asking if he wanted one. He was lonely, and so was she. Maybe that's why she stopped pushing him away. 3 weeks after the convoy blocked her gate, Amara asked him the question she'd been avoiding. They were sitting on her couch, the television on but neither of them watching it. Rain drummed against the windows, and the city outside was a blur of lights and noise. "Who are they?" she asked. "The people trying to kill you." Kane didn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the window. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He was quiet for a long time. She thought he wouldn't answer, that he'd shut down the way he always did when she got too close to something real. But then he spoke. "Rivals," he said. "Men who think I've taken something that belongs to them." "Have you?" "Yes." At least he was honest. "What?" "Territory. Power. Respect." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Things men kill for. And you'll kill them back." "If I have to." She shook her head. "This is insane. This is my life. It doesn't have to be." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yes, it does." She wanted to argue, to tell him he could walk away, start over, be someone else. But she knew better. Men like Kane didn't walk away. They baned until there was nothing left. "What about me?" she asked quietly. "What happens when this is over?" "You go back to your life." "What if I can't?" His gaze held hers, and for a moment she saw something flicker there, something like regret. "Then I'll make sure you can." She didn't believe him, but she wanted to. The shift happened slowly. At first, she didn't notice it, but then she started catching herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his hands moved when he poured coffee, the way his voice softened when he said her name. She started looking forward to the sound of his knock on her door, started feeling the absence when he didn't come. It terrified her. She told herself it was just proximity, just the strange intimacy that comes from fear and survival. She told herself she didn't care about him, that she was just making the best of a terrible situation. She told herself a lot of lies. One night, she asked him about the scar on his jaw. They were in her kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, something they'd fallen into the habit of doing together. He was drying dishes while she washed, their movements synchronized in a way that felt too natural. "Where'd you get that?" she asked, nodding toward his face. He touched the scar absently. "A long time ago." "That's not an answer." "I know." She rolled her eyes. "You're impossible." "So I've been told." She handed him a plate. Their fingers brushed, just for a second, and she felt the jolt of it run through her. He felt it too. She saw the way his eyes flicked to hers, the way his jaw tightened. "I was 19, he said suddenly. "Got into a fight I shouldn't have. Guy had a knife. I didn't." "Who won?" "I did." "Of course you did." He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "Maybe it is." "Would you prefer I'd lost?" She looked at him, at the scar, at the man he'd become because of it. "I don't know." The honesty surprised them both. They stood there in the kitchen, the air between them thick with something neither of them knew how to name. "You're different than I thought you'd be," she said finally. "How so?" "I thought you'd be colder, crueler. I can be. But you're not. Not with me." He set the dish down and turned to face her fully. "No, not with you." She should have stepped back. She should have put distance between them. But she didn't. She stayed right where she was, close enough to feel the heat of him, to see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you didn't have to stop," he said, his voice rough. "On that highway. You didn't have to help me, but you did, and that means something. It means I was stupid. It means you good." She laughed, a broken sound. "I'm not good, Kane. I'm just tired." "Then rest." He said it like it was simple, like she could just decide to stop carrying the weight of the world. Maybe, in his world, it was that simple. Maybe, in his world, you just took what you wanted and damn the consequences. She envied him for that. If you've ever felt torn between fear and love, you'll understand her. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The next day, everything changed. Amora woke to the sound of shouting, not from her apartment, but from the street below. She ran to the window and looked down, her heart pounding. One of Kane's men was on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. The others had their guns drawn, pointing at a black car idling at the curb. The back window rolled down, and a man leaned out, his face hidden in shadow. He was looking up at her. Amora stumbled back from the window, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. She grabbed her phone, her hand shaking, and called Kane. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "They're here," she said, her voice breaking. "Outside my building. One of your men is down." She heard him curse, heard the sound of a car door slamming. "Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone." "Kane." "I'm coming." The line went dead. Amora locked the door, her hands fumbling with the chain. She backed into the corner of the room, her eyes fixed on the door, waiting for it to burst open. Minutes felt like hours. The shouting outside grew louder, then stopped. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. And then the knock came. Soft, deliberate. "Amora." It was Kane's voice, but she didn't move. She couldn't. Fear had locked her in place. "Amora, it's me. Open the door." She forced her legs to move, forced herself across the room. She checked the peephole, saw his face, and unlocked the door. He pushed inside, slamming it shut behind him. His suit was disheveled, his knuckles bloody. He looked at her, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, unable to speak. He pulled her into his arms. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate, rough, the kind of embrace that came from fear and relief tangled together. She felt his heart pounding against her chest, felt the way his hands gripped her like he was afraid she'd disappear. "You're okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "You're okay." She pressed her face against his chest and let herself break. They moved her that night. No explanation, no discussion. Kane simply told her to pack a bag, and within an hour, she was in the back of one of his SUVs, watching her apartment building disappear into the distance. She didn't ask where they were going. She'd learned by now that asking didn't change the destination. The safe house was on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind high walls and iron gates. It was large, cold, the kind of place that had never been a home. Marble floors, empty hallways, windows that looked out onto nothing but trees and darkness. Kane walked her inside, his hand on the small of her back, guiding her through rooms she didn't care to memorize. He stopped in front of a bedroom door on the second floor. "This is yours," he said. She looked inside. The bed was too big. The walls were too white. It felt like a cell dressed up as comfort. How long? She asked. I don't know. She turned to him, exhaustion making her bold. You keep saying that. I don't know. But you do know, don't you? You know exactly how this ends. His jaw tightened. Not yet. When? When I've dealt with them. By dealt with, you mean killed. He didn't deny it. Yes. She laughed, the sound hollow. And then what? You think I'll just go back to my life? Pretend none of this happened. You'll be safe. That's not the same as free. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression, something that looked almost like understanding. No, he said quietly. It's not. He left her there, alone in that too big room, with nothing but her thoughts and the weight of her own helplessness. The days in the safe house stretched into weeks. Amora lost track of time. There were no calendars, no routine to anchor herself to. She woke when she woke, ate when food was brought to her, slept when exhaustion won. The men who guarded the house were ghosts, silent, invisible, always there but never present. Cain was different. He came every evening, sometimes with dinner, sometimes with just his presence. They fell into a rhythm, the two of them. He'd sit in the chair by the window while she sat on the bed, and they'd talk. Not about the danger, not about the men hunting them, about other things, small things, meaningless things. She told him about her daughter, about the way she laughed at terrible jokes and drew pictures of animals that looked nothing like animals. He told her about books he'd read, places he'd been before his life became what it was. They talked until the words ran out, and then they sat in silence, comfortable in a way that surprised them both. One night, she asked him about his family. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice low and careful. My father died when I was 12. My mother a few years after that. I'm sorry. He shrugged. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it easier. No, he agreed. It doesn't. She wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the man behind the mask. But she could see the way his shoulders had tensed, the way his hands had curled into loose fists. Some doors weren't meant to be opened. Do you have anyone? She asked instead. Friends, people who care about you. He smiled, but it was bitter. People who work for me, people who fear me. That's not the same thing. No, she said softly. It's not. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt the weight of his gaze settle over her like a blanket. UK. It wasn't a question. She didn't answer it anyway. The isolation wore on her. Amara had always been someone who needed people, who thrived in the chaos of the diner, the noise of the city. Here, in this silence, she felt herself unraveling. She paced the hallways, counted the tiles on the floor, stared out windows at a world she couldn't touch. She thought about her daughter constantly, wondered if she was okay, if she missed her, if she hated her for disappearing. She called her mother once a week, careful never to say too much, careful to keep her voice light and cheerful. But the distance was growing, and she felt it like a wound. Cain noticed. He always noticed. You need to get out of this house, he said one evening. She looked at him, surprised. You said it wasn't safe. It's not, but you're going to lose your mind if you stay locked up much longer. And what do you suggest? A walk in the garden? He smiled. Something like that. That night, he took her outside. Not far, just to the edge of the property, where the trees grew thick and the city lights were distant stars. The air was cool, crisp, and she breathed it in like it was the first breath she'd taken in weeks. They walked in silence, the only sound the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. She felt the tension in her shoulders ease, felt the knot in her chest loosen. Out here, in the dark, she could almost pretend she was normal again. Thank you, she said. He glanced at her. For what? For this. For trying. You shouldn't have to thank me for basic decency. Maybe, but I do anyway. They stopped at the edge of a small clearing, the moon bright overhead. She tilted her head back and looked at the sky, at the stars scattered like broken glass. I used to do this with my daughter, she said. Look at the stars. She'd make up stories about them, about constellations that didn't exist. What kind of stories? Amora smiled. Silly ones. About princesses and dragons and knights. The kind of stories where everyone lives happily ever after. Do you believe in that? He asked. Happily ever after. She looked at him. Do you? No. Then why ask? Because I want to know if you do. She thought about it, about all the times she'd hoped for something better, something easier. All the times hope had let her down. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe I used to. But now, I think I'd settle for just after. He nodded, like he understood. Maybe he did. They stood there for a while longer, the night wrapping around them, before heading back inside. If your heart's racing too, take a breath, and don't forget to comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more unforgettable love stories. The shift between them was subtle at first, a touch that lingered too long, a look that held more weight than it should. The way their conversations stretched later into the night, neither of them wanting to be the first to leave. Amora told herself it didn't mean anything. She told herself she was just lonely, that anyone would feel this way in her situation. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was falling for him. It was a slow, inevitable descent, like water wearing down stone. She noticed the way he listened when she spoke, like every word mattered. The way he remembered small things, how she took her coffee, what book she liked. The way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious, something worth protecting. She hated it, hated that she cared about a man who killed without hesitation, who lived in a world she wanted no part of. Hated that he made her feel safe when he was the reason she was in danger in the first place. But hate wasn't strong enough to stop it. One night, they were sitting on the couch in the main living room, a book open between them. She'd been reading aloud, something he'd asked her to do because he liked the sound of her voice. She stopped mid-sentence, suddenly aware of how close they were, of the way his eyes were on her instead of the page. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked. Like what? Like I don't know. Something other than what I am. He reached out, his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, deliberate. And what are you? Trapped. His hand stilled. Is that how you see this? Isn't it? He pulled back, his expression unreadable. I'm trying to keep you alive, Amora. That's all. Is it? The question hung between them, too heavy to ignore. He stood, pacing to the window, his hands shoved into his pockets. She watched him, watched the way his shoulders rose and fell with each breath. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe it was. At first. But now. Now what? He turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Now I don't know what this is. She stood, closing the distance between them. Kane! Don't, he said, his voice rough. Don't say it. Don't make this harder than it already is. Harder for who? For both of us. She reached up, her hand resting against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath her palm. What if I don't care? You should. But I don't. He closed his eyes, his jaw clenched, and then, slowly, he brought his hand up to cover hers. This is a mistake. Probably. You deserve better. Maybe. Amora. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, reckless, the kind of kiss born from too many nights alone and too many words left unsaid. He froze for a heartbeat, and then he was kissing her back, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer. They broke apart, both of them breathing hard, and stared at each other. "I can't promise you anything," he said. "I'm not asking you to. This won't end well." "I know." He kissed her again, softer this time, and she felt herself falling further into something she couldn't name. They didn't talk about the kiss. Not the next morning, when Amara woke alone in her too-big bed, the sheets cool beside her. Not at breakfast, when Kane sat across from her with his coffee and his silence. Not in the days that followed, when they moved around each other carefully, like dancers afraid of stepping on each other's feet. But it was there, always there, in the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking, in the way her breath caught when he walked into a room, in the space between them that somehow felt smaller and larger all at once. Amora tried to focus on other things. She read. She walked the grounds with one of the guards trailing her at a distance. She called her mother and lied about where she was, what she was doing, when she'd be home. Each lie felt like swallowing glass. Her daughter was forgetting her. She could hear it in the pauses on the phone, the way her voice had started to sound distant. Asterisk, when are you coming back, Mama? Asterisk, she'd ask. And Amora never had an answer. One afternoon, she broke. She was alone in her room, staring at the wall, when the tears finally came. She didn't cry often. She'd learned young that tears didn't fix things, but this time, she couldn't stop them. They came in waves, each one stronger than the last, until she was curled on the floor, her chest heaving with sobs she'd been holding back for weeks. She didn't hear the door open, didn't hear Kane cross the room. She only realized he was there when she felt his arms around her, pulling her against him. "I can't do this," she gasped. "I can't." "You can," he said, his voice steady. "You are. I'm losing her. My daughter. She's forgetting me." His grip tightened. "No, she's not. She could never forget you. You don't know that." "I do, because you're the kind of mother she'll carry with her for the rest of her life." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the fear was too loud, too overwhelming. He held her until the tears stopped, until her breathing evened out. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. That night, something shifted again. They were in the library, a room Amara had discovered a few days earlier, filled with books that looked like they'd never been read. She was curled in one of the armchairs, a blanket draped over her legs, when Kane walked in. He looked tired, more than tired, worn down, like the weight of his world was finally catching up to him. He sank into the chair across from her and leaned his head back, his eyes closed. "Rough day?" she asked. "You could say that." "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." She nodded, turning back to her book. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the crackle of the fire in the hearth. Then, quietly, he spoke. "I killed someone today." Her fingers stilled on the page. She didn't look at him. "Did you have to?" "Yes." "Does it bother you?" He was quiet for a long time. Not the way it should. She closed the book and set it aside. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want you to forget what I am." "I haven't." "Good." She looked at him then, at the way his hands were clenched on the armrests, at the shadows under his eyes. "Do you want me to be afraid of you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it would be easier." "For who?" He opened his eyes and met her gaze. "For both of us." She stood, crossed the room, and knelt in front of him. He stiffened, like he didn't know what to do with her proximity. She reached up and took one of his hands, uncurling his fingers from the armrest. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. "You should be." "But I'm not." His jaw tightened. "Amora." "I see you," she said. "Not just what you do. Not just the blood. I see you." He pulled his hand back like she'd burned him. "You don't know what you're seeing." "Maybe, but I'm looking anyway." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. She stayed where she was, watching him. After a long moment, he spoke, his voice low and rough. I was 14 the first time I killed someone. He was twice my age, twice my size. He tried to hurt someone I cared about, and I put a bullet in his chest without hesitation. He turned to face her. That's who I am, Amora. That's who I've always been. And who is the man who sits with me every night? Who brings me coffee in the morning and listens to me read? Who held me while I cried today? The same man. Exactly. He shook his head. You're not hearing me. No, you're not hearing me, Star. I don't care about your past, Kane. I care about right now. And right now, you're the only thing standing between me and the dark. That's not enough. It's enough for me. He looked at her like she was something incomprehensible, something he couldn't quite solve. And then, slowly, he crossed the room and pulled her to her feet. This is a mistake, he said, echoing his words from before. Then let's make it together. He kissed her, hard, desperate, like he was drowning and she was air. She kissed him back with everything she had, with all the fear and loneliness and need she'd been carrying. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise you a future. I'm not asking for one. I'm asking for now. Now is all I have. Then give it to me. And he did. Before we close this chapter, take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Every small gesture helps the next story find its way to you. The days that followed were different. Not easier, nothing about their situation was easy, but different. There was a warmth now, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. Kane touched her more, small, fleeting touches that said things he couldn't put into words. Her hand in his fingers brushing her cheek, the weight of his arm around her shoulders when they sat together in the evenings. Amora let herself sink into it. She knew it was dangerous, knew it would hurt when it ended. But for now, she let herself have this. Let herself pretend they were just two people who'd found each other, instead of two people bound by circumstance and fear. One night, she asked him about his scars. They were lying in her bed, the moonlight streaming through the window. She traced the lines on his chest with her fingertips, feeling the raised skin, the stories written there. Where'd you get this one? She asked, touching a long, jagged line near his ribs. Knife fight. I was 23. And this? A smaller mark, near his shoulder. Bullet. 27. She looked up at him. How are you still alive? He smiled, a small, sad thing. Luck. Stubbornness. I don't know. She pressed a kiss to the scar on his ribs. I'm glad you are. His hand came up, threading through her hair. Me too. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, the world outside forgotten. But the world had a way of intruding. Amara woke one morning to the sound of raised voices downstairs. She pulled on a robe and hurried down the hallway, her heart pounding. She found Kane in the foyer, his phone pressed to his ear, his expression dark. How many? He was saying. When? She stopped on the stairs, not wanting to interrupt but unable to leave. He hung up and turned to her, his jaw tight. They found us. Her blood went cold. What? They know where we are. We need to move. Now. But. Now, Amora. She ran back upstairs, throwing clothes into a bag with shaking hands. Her mind was racing. How had they found them? How long did they have? Where would they go? Kane appeared in the doorway, his own bag slung over his shoulder. Ready? She nodded, even though she wasn't. She'd never be ready for this. They left through the back, one of Kane's men leading the way. The forest was dark, the trees pressing in on all sides. Amora's breath came in short gasps as she ran, her feet slipping on the uneven ground. Behind them, she heard the sound of gunfire. Kane grabbed her hand, pulling her forward. Don't stop. Don't look back. She didn't. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out. And when she finally collapsed, Cain caught her, holding her upright. "You're okay," he said. "You're okay." But she wasn't. Not really. Because the illusion of safety had shattered, and she realized what she'd known all along. There was no escape. Not for her. Not for him. Not for anyone. They drove through the night. No destination. Just distance. Amara sat in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, watching the headlights carve tunnels through the dark. Cain drove in silence, his jaw set, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Behind them, the safe house burned. She'd seen it in the rearview mirror before they turned onto the highway, flames licking up the walls, black smoke billowing into the sky. Everything inside her wanted to ask how it happened, who betrayed them, but the words wouldn't come. She was too tired, too numb. They stopped just before dawn at a motel on the edge of nowhere, the kind of place with flickering neon signs and doors that didn't quite close. Cain paid in cash, didn't give a name, and led her to a room at the far end of the building. It smelled like stale cigarettes and old regret. Amora sank onto the bed, her body heavy. Cain locked the door, checked the windows, then finally sat beside her. They didn't touch. They just sat there, side by side, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. "I'm sorry," he said finally. She looked at him. "For what?" "For all of it. For dragging you into this. For not being able to keep you safe." "You are keeping me safe." "Barely." She reached out and took his hand. "Barely is enough." He looked at their joined hands, and something in his expression cracked. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." "Then don't." He turned to her, confusion flickering across his face. "What?" "Walk away. Let me go. End this." "You know I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because they'll kill you." "Maybe, but at least I'd be free first." He pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. "Don't say that." "Why?" "Because it's true." He paced to the window, his back to her. "Because I can't lose you." The words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Amora stood, crossing the room to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, felt the tension coiled there. "You don't have me," she said softly. "You never did." He tamed, and the look in his eyes nearly broke her. "Yes, I do." And before she could respond, he kissed her. It was different this time. Not desperate, not rough. It was slow, tender, the kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. She kissed him back, pouring all her fear and hope and grief into it. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you." She closed her eyes. "Don't. It's too late. It's always been too late." "I know." They stood there, holding each other in that run-down motel room, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way. The next few days were a blur of highways and back roads, cheap motels and diners with greasy coffee. Cain kept them moving, never staying in one place longer than a night. Amara didn't ask where they were going. She didn't think he knew. But something had shifted between them. The walls were down now, the pretense gone. They talked, really talked, about things that mattered. About the lives they'd lived before this. About the choices that had led them here. About what came next, even though neither of them had an answer. One night, in a motel room that looked exactly like all the others, Amara told him about her ex-husband. "He left when our daughter was 2, she said, staring at the ceiling. Said he couldn't handle the responsibility, that I was asking too much of him." Cain was quiet beside her. He was a coward. Maybe, or maybe he was just honest. Not everyone's built for the hard parts of life. "Are you defending him?" "No, just understanding him. There's a difference." He turned to face her. "You deserved better." "Maybe, but better wasn't an option." "It should have been." She looked at him, at the fierce protectiveness in his eyes. You think you're better? No, I'm worse, but at least I'm here. She smiled, sad and small. Yeah, you are. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I'd give you the world if I could. I don't need the world. I just need you to keep trying. That's all I know how to do. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, holding on like they were each other's last lifeline. The call came 3 days later. Amara was in the shower when she heard Kane's phone ring. She turned off the water, listening, and heard his voice rise, sharp, controlled, dangerous. She dried off quickly, threw on clothes, and found him standing in the middle of the room, his phone clutched in his hand, his face pale. What happened? She asked. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw fear in his eyes. Real, bone-deep fear. They have my brother. Amora's breath caught. I didn't know you had a brother. Half-brother. We're not close, but they don't care about that. What do they want? Me. In exchange for him. You can't. He looked at her. His my blood. His bait. I know. Kane. I have to go, Amora. She grabbed his arm. It's a trap. You know it's a trap. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. If you go, they'll kill you both. He pulled free, pacing. I can't just leave him. Why not? You said you weren't close. You said. He's my brother. The words exploded out of him, loud and raw. He's the only family I have left. I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose him too. Amora felt her heart crack. She crossed the room, taking his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. Then let me come with you. No. Kane. No. You stay here. You stay safe. I'm not safe anywhere. You know that. He closed his eyes, his jaw clenched. I can't protect you both. Then don't. Protect him. I can take care of myself. That's not. It's the only way, she said. You know it is. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the war raging behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but you stay in the car. You don't get out, no matter what. Okay. He kissed her, hard and fast. If anything happens to me, nothing's going to happen. If it does, you run. You don't look back. You take the money in the glove box and you disappear. You hear me? She nodded, even though she knew she wouldn't. She couldn't. Not anymore. If your heart's racing too, take a breath. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more unforgettable love stories. They drove to the meeting place in silence. It was an old warehouse on the waterfront, the kind of place where deals went bad and bodies disappeared. Kane parked a block away, then turned to her. Stay here. Lock the doors. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, you leave. Kane. 20 minutes. She nodded, her throat tight. He kissed her once more, then got out of the car. She watched him walk toward the warehouse, his figure growing smaller with each step until he disappeared through the rusted metal door. And then she waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. At 16 minutes, she heard the gunshot. Her heart stopped. Her hands moved before her mind caught up, unlocking the door, stumbling out of the car. She ran toward the warehouse, her feet pounding against the pavement. She burst through the door and froze. Kane was on his knees, blood streaming from his shoulder. A man stood behind him, a gun pressed to the back of his head. Another man, younger, with Kane's eyes, was bound to a chair in the corner, his face bruised and swollen. The man with the gun looked at Amora and smiled. Well, well, look who decided to join us. Kane's head snapped up, his eyes widening. Amora, run. The man hit him with the butt of the gun, and Kane crumpled. Amora screamed. The man laughed. She really does care about you. How sweet. He turned the gun on her, and everything went dark. Amora woke to the smell of rust and salt. Her head throbbed. Her wrists ached. When she tried to move, she realized she was tied to a chair, rough rope cutting into her skin. She blinked, forcing her eyes to focus, and saw she was still in the warehouse. The dim light filtering through broken windows told her it was either late afternoon or early morning. She couldn't tell which. Across from her, Kane was slumped in another chair, his head hanging forward. Blood had dried on his shirt, dark and stiff. For a horrible moment, she thought he was dead. Then she saw his chest rise and fall, shallow but steady. "Kane!" she called out, her voice hoarse. He didn't respond. To her right, the younger man, Kane's brother, was still bound to his chair. His eyes were open, watching her with a mix of fear and resignation. "He's alive," the brother said quietly. "They drugged him." "Who are you?" Amora asked. "Elias, and you're the woman who got my brother into this mess." "I didn't." "Save it." His voice was bitter. "I know the story. You helped him. He fixated on you. Now we're all going to die because of it." Before Amora could respond, the metal door screeched open. 3 men walked in, the leader, the one who'd held the gun to Kane's head, at the front. He was tall, lean, with the kind of face that looked almost friendly until you saw his eyes. "Good. You're awake." He pulled up a chair and sat in front of Amora, too close. "We have some things to discuss, you and I." "I have nothing to say to you." He smiled. "That's fine. I'll do the talking. You see, your boyfriend there," he gestured toward Kane. "He took something that belongs to me. Territory, money, respect, and I want it back." "Then take it up with him." "Oh, I will, once he wakes up. But in the meantime, I thought we could get to know each other. Amora, isn't it? Pretty name. Tell me, what's a nice woman like you doing with a monster like him?" She said nothing. He leaned closer. "Let me guess. He saved you, swept you off your feet, made you feel safe, and now you think you love him. What I feel is none of your business." "But it is." His voice hardened. "Because what you feel is leverage. And leverage is the only currency that matters in my world." He stood, pacing. "Here's what's going to happen. When he wakes up, I'm going to offer him a choice. He can die quickly, or he can watch you die slowly. Either way, I win. But I'm curious, which do you think he'll choose?" Amora's stomach turned. "You're going to kill us anyway." "Probably. But where's the fun in that? I want to see him break first. I want to see the great Kane brought to his knees by something as simple as love." He crouched in front of her again. "And you're going to help me do it?" "No." He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. "You don't have a choice." Behind him, Kane stirred. Kane woke slowly, every nerve in his body screaming. His shoulder was on fire where the bullet had grazed him. His head felt like it had been split open. But worse than the physical pain was the realization of where he was. What had happened? He forced his eyes open and saw her. Amora, tied to a chair, bruised but alive. Relief and terror hit him in equal measure. "Welcome back," the voice said, and Kane turned his head to see Marcus, his oldest enemy, his most persistent ghost, standing in the center of the room. "Marcus." Kane's voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "In the flesh. Surprised?" "Not really. You always were predictable." Marcus laughed. "Still got that mouth, I see, even when you're about to die." Kane tested his restraints. Tight. Professional. He wasn't getting out of these on his own. He glanced at Elias, who looked away, shame written all over his face. Then back at Amora, who met his eyes with a steadiness that broke his heart. "Let them go," Kane said. "This is between you and me." "Oh, I don't think so. See, I've learned that the best way to hurt you is through the people you care about. And you care about her, don't you? Kane said nothing. Marcus walked over to Amara, running a finger along her cheek. Kane saw her flinch, saw the rage flash in her eyes. She's pretty. I can see why you kept her. Touch her again and I'll kill you. You're not really in a position to make threats. But Marcus stepped back anyway. Let's make this interesting. You get to choose. Who dies first? Your brother or your lover? Neither. That's not an option. Kane's mind raced. He needed time. Needed a distraction. Needed something star. If I give you what you want, you let them go. And what makes you think I want anything from you besides your death? Because if you just wanted me dead, you would have done it already. You want something else. What is it? Marcus studied him for a long moment, then smiled. You always were smart. Fine. There's a shipment. Weapons. Coming in next week. I know you have the details. Give them to me, and I'll let the woman go. Not my brother. Your brother's a liability. He knows too much. But how? He glanced at Amora. She's just a civilian. No reason for her to die if you cooperate. Don't believe him, Amora said. He's lying. Marcus hit her. The sound echoed through the warehouse. Kane lunged against his restraints, the chair rocking, but the ropes held. Stop! Then give me what I want. Kane forced himself to calm down, to think. If he gave Marcus the information, it would save Amora. Maybe. But it would also put dozens of other lives at risk. And there was no guarantee Marcus would keep his word. But if he didn't, he looked at Amora, at the blood trickling from her split lip, at the defiance still burning in her eyes. Okay, he said. I'll tell you. But first, you untie her. You let her walk out of here. Then I'll give you everything you need. Marcus laughed. You think I'm stupid? She stays tied until I get what I want. Then we'll see. Then no deal. Fine. Marcus pulled out a gun, pressed it to Amora's temple. Maybe I don't need a deal. Time stopped. Kane's heart hammered. His mind spun through scenarios, calculations, probabilities. None of them ended well. Wait, Elias said. Everyone turned. Elias was staring at Kane, his face pale. I'll tell you. Elias, no. I know the shipment he's talking about. I overheard him on the phone last week. I can tell you everything. Marcus lowered the gun, intrigued. Can you now? Yes, but only if you let them both go. Elias, Kane's voice was sharp, desperate. Elias ignored him. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. Marcus considered, then nodded. Fine. Talk. And Elias did. He gave Marcus everything. Dates, locations, cargo manifests. Information that would cost Kane millions, that would unravel years of careful planning. When Elias finished, Marcus smiled. Good. Very good. Then he shot him. Amora screamed. Kane roared, throwing his weight against the chair, the wood splintering but the ropes still holding. Elias slumped forward, blood pooling beneath him. You said. Kane's voice broke. You said. I said I'd let the woman go. I never said anything about him. Marcus walked toward the door, his men following. Enjoy your last moments together. I'll make sure they are memorable. They left. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Kane stared at his brother's body, his mind blank, his chest hollow. Elias. Stupid, reckless Elias. Who'd never wanted this life but had been born into it anyway. Who'd tried to save them and paid the price. Kane. Amora's voice cut through the fog. Kane, we have to get out of here. He couldn't move, couldn't think. Kane. He looked at her, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke her. I'm sorry, he whispered. Don't you dare give up now. We're getting out of here. Both of us. Do you hear me? He wanted to believe her, wanted to find the strength to fight. But all he could see was Elias's blood, spreading across the floor. He died for nothing, Cain said. No. He died so we could live. Don't make it meaningless. Something in her words cut through the numbness. Cain took a breath, then another. He looked around the warehouse, assessing. The chairs, the ropes, the door. Can you reach your pockets? Amora asked. He twisted, wincing at the pain in his shoulder, and managed to snake his hand into his jacket. His fingers brushed metal. A small knife, one he always kept hidden. Got it. Then start cutting. He did. It took longer than it should have. His fingers clumsy, the angle awkward. But eventually, the ropes frayed, then snapped. He stood, swaying, and stumbled over to Amara. Hold still, he said, sewing through her restraints. When she was free, she threw her arms around him, holding him tight. We're going to make it. Amora. We are. He wanted to believe her, so he nodded. They moved toward the door, but before they reached it, they heard voices outside. Footsteps. Cain pulled Amara behind a stack of crates, his hand over her mouth. They waited, barely breathing, as the door opened and two men walked in. Cain moved fast. He took down the first man with a single strike, grabbed his gun, and shot the second before he could raise his weapon. The shots echoed. They had seconds, maybe less. Run, Cain said. They ran. They didn't stop running until their lungs burned and their legs gave out. Amara collapsed against a brick wall in an alley 3 blocks from the warehouse, her chest heaving, her vision swimming. Cain leaned beside her, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder, the other still gripping the stolen gun. The city around them was waking up. Early morning light filtered through the gaps between buildings. People would be on the street soon. Witnesses. Cameras. They needed to move. But Amora couldn't. Not yet. Your brother, she said between gasps. I'm so sorry. Cain's face was stone. Don't. Cain. I said don't. His voice cracked. He closed his eyes, his jaw clenched so tight she thought it might shatter. He made his choice. I have to live with it. That's all. But she could see the lie in every line of his body. The way his hands shook. The way he wouldn't look at her. The way grief sat on his shoulders like a physical weight. She reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. It's okay to. No. He pulled away, pushing off the wall. We need to keep moving. They'll be looking for us. He was right. She knew he was right. But watching him lock away his pain, watching him retreat into that cold, controlled place where nothing could touch him, it hurt worse than any bruise. They moved through the city like ghosts. Cain kept them to the shadows, avoiding main streets, doubling back when he sensed danger. Amara followed, too exhausted to question, too numb to feel afraid anymore. They ended up at a rundown apartment building on the east side. Cain picked the lock on a unit on the 3rd floor, empty, by the look of it, abandoned months ago. Inside, the air was stale, dust thick on every surface. Amora sank onto the floor, her back against the wall. Cain checked the windows, then the door, then finally stood in the middle of the room, looking lost. Sit down, she said quietly. Let me look at your shoulder. It's fine. It's not. You're bleeding through your shirt. He looked down, seemed to notice for the first time. It's just a graze. Sit down. Something in her tone made him listen. He sat beside her, and she helped him ease off his jacket, then his shirt. The wound was angry and red, the bullet having carved a path through the meat of his shoulder. Not fatal, but not fine either. We need supplies, she said. Bandages. Antiseptic. Later. Cain. Later. He turned to face her fully, and the rawness in his eyes stole her breath. I almost lost you today. But you didn't. I should have never brought you. I should have left you at the motel. I should have. She pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. You did what you thought was right. That's all anyone can do. It got Elias killed. No, Marcus got Elias killed, not you. He shook his head, pulling away from her touch. You don't understand. Everything I touch turns to ash. Everyone I care about ends up dead. My father, my mother, now Elias. And soon, his voice broke. Soon you. I'm still here. For how long? She didn't have an answer. So instead, she did the only thing she could. She wrapped her arms around him and held on. For a long time, he didn't move. Then, slowly, his arms came up around her, and he buried his face in her hair. She felt his shoulders shake, felt the wetness against her neck. Cain was crying. This man of steel and shadow, this man who killed without hesitation, was crying in her arms. And somehow, it made her love him more. They stayed in that apartment for 2 days. It wasn't safe. Nowhere was safe anymore. But they needed time. Time to rest. Time to plan. Time to grieve. Amora did what she could with the supplies Cain managed to steal from a pharmacy. Cleaned his wound, bandaged it, made sure infection didn't set in. He let her tend to him with a docility that scared her. Like he'd given up. Like he was just going through the motions. At night, they lay on the bay floor, a single moth-eaten blanket between them and the cold. They didn't talk much. Words felt inadequate. Instead, they held each other, drawing what comfort they could from skin and warmth and breath. On the second night, Cain finally spoke. I need to end this. Amora turned to face him in the darkness. How? Marcus. He's the head of the snake. I cut him off. The rest falls apart. You tried that before. It didn't work. Because I played by the rules. No more rules. She heard the finality in his voice, the cold determination. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. Cain. He won't stop, Amora. You know that. As long as he's alive, you're in danger. My people are in danger. It ends with him. And how do you plan to get to him? He'll be expecting you now. He'll be ready. I know. So it's suicide. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe. No. She sat up, her heart pounding. No, you're not doing this. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. We can run. We can disappear. We can. Live the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for the bullet. He shook his head. That's not living, Amora. That's dying slowly. It's still better than dying quickly. He reached up, cupping her face in his hand. Not to me. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream at him, shake him, make him see reason. But she knew that look in his eyes. She'd seen it before, in her own mirror, in those dark moments when the weight of the world got too heavy. He'd already made his decision. Then I'm coming with you, she said. No. Yes. Amora. You don't get to decide for me. Not anymore. If you're going to do this, if you're going to throw your life away, then I'm going to be there. I'm trying to protect you. I don't want protection. I want you. Alive. But if I can't have that, then I want to be there at the end. He stared at her, and she saw the war raging behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded. Okay. Okay. But you do exactly as I say. No arguments. No heroics. Promise me. She hesitated, then nodded. I promise. It was a lie. They both knew it. The plan was simple, brutal, desperate. Marcus would be at his club that night. He always was on Fridays. He held court there, surrounded by his men, untouchable. Or so he thought. Cain had one advantage. Marcus was arrogant. He believed he'd already won. He wouldn't expect an attack, not so soon, not when Cain was wounded and on the run. That arrogance would kill him. They spent the day preparing. Kane checked his weapons, mapped the exits, ran through scenarios. Amara watched him work, memorizing every detail, knowing this might be the last day they had together. Before they left, she pulled him aside. "If this goes wrong," she said, "if we don't make it out, we will. But if we don't, I need you to know," she swallowed hard, "I don't regret any of this. Meeting you, helping you, loving you, even if it ends badly, I don't regret it." He kissed her, slow and deep, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. "I love you," he said. "I've never said that to anyone, never wanted to, but I love you, and I'm sorry I couldn't give you the life you deserved. You gave me something better. You gave me truth." He smiled, sad and small. "Is that enough?" "It has to be. If stories like this linger in your heart long after they end, don't leave just yet. Like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below, and let the next story find you when the night grows quiet again." The club was exactly as Kane remembered. Dark, loud, pulsing with music and bodies and the smell of expensive cologne and cheap decisions. They entered through the back, Kane picking the lock like he'd done it 1,000 times. Maybe he had. Inside, they moved through savage corridors, staying in the shadows. Amora's heart hammered so loud she thought someone would hear it. But no one stopped them. No one saw them. Until they reached the VIP section. Marcus was there, just as Kane predicted, sitting in a booth surrounded by his men. He looked relaxed, confident, a king in his castle. Kane raised his gun. Time slowed. Amora saw it all. Kane's finger on the trigger, Marcus's eyes widening as he spotted them, the guards reaching for their weapons. The first shot rang out. Not from Kane. From behind them. Kane spun, his body moving on instinct, putting himself between Amora and the threat. She felt the impact of the bullet hit him, felt him stagger. "No!" she screamed. Chaos erupted. Gunfire. Shouting. Bodies moving in every direction. Kane returned fire, taking down the guard who'd shot him, then another. But there were too many guns, too many bodies. He grabbed Amora's hand, pulling her toward an exit. They ran, stumbling, blood trailing behind them. More shots, more shouting. They burst through a door and into an alley. Rain had started to fall, cold and relentless. Kane pressed a hand to his side, and Amora saw the blood seeping through his fingers. "You're hit," she gasped. "I'm fine." "You're not." "Amora." He cupped her face, his hand shaking. "Run." "No. Please, please run." Behind them, the door burst open. Marcus stepped out, flanked by 4 men, all armed. Kane pushed Amora behind him, raising his gun. But his hand was shaking, his aim unsteady. Marcus smiled. "End of the line, old friend." "Not yet," Kane said, and he fired. The bullet caught Marcus in the chest. He looked down, surprised, then back up at Kane. "You." He collapsed. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marcus's men raised their weapons. Kane turned to Amora one last time. "I love you," he said. And then he charged them. Amora screamed his name, but he was already gone, throwing himself at the men, giving her a chance to run. She ran, tears streaming down her face, heart breaking with every step. She ran. Behind her, she heard the gunfire stop. She didn't look back. Amora ran until her legs gave out, until she collapsed in an alley miles from the club, retching into a puddle of rainwater. Her body heaved with sobs she couldn't control, her mind replaying that final moment over and over. I love you. The last words he'd ever say to her. She stayed there until the rain stopped, until the cold seeped into her bones and forced her to move. She had no destination, no plan. She just walked, one foot in front of the other, through streets that blurred together into meaningless shapes. Dawn came. The city woke around her, indifferent to her pain. People passed her on the sidewalk, businessmen checking their phones, mothers with strollers, teenagers laughing at some private joke. The world kept turning, even though Hayes had stopped. She found herself at a phone booth. Her fingers moved automatically, dialing a number she'd memorized years ago. Her mother answered on the third ring. "Hello." Amora's voice cracked. "Mom." "Amora? Oh my God, where have you been? Are you okay? Your daughter's been. I need to come home." Silence. Then, quietly, "Okay, come home." She took a bus across 3 states, paid for with the cash Kane had given her weeks ago. She slept in fits and starts, dreaming of gunfire and blood and the look in his eyes when he'd pushed her behind him one last time. In the dreams, she always turned back. In the dreams, she was fast enough to save him. Reality was crueler. Her mother met her at the bus station, and the moment Amora saw her, the last of her composure shattered. She fell into her mother's arms like a child, sobbing into her shoulder while strangers pretended not to notice. "It's okay," her mother murmured, stroking her hair. "You're home now. You're safe." But Amora didn't feel safe. She didn't feel anything except the gaping void where her heart used to be. Her daughter was at the house, playing with dolls in the living room. When she saw Amora, her face lit up. "Mama!" Amora caught her as she ran, holding her so tight the girl squirmed. "I missed you," Amora whispered. "I missed you so much." "Where did you go?" "No way important. I'm here now. I'm here." That night, after her daughter was asleep, Amora sat on the porch with her mother. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, her mother broke the silence. "What happened to you?" Amora looked at her hands. They were still shaking. "I met someone. And he's gone." Her mother nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was my fault. All of it." "I doubt that." Amora laughed, a broken sound. "I pulled over on a highway. I helped a stranger, and it destroyed everything." "Did it? You're still here. Your daughter's still here. That's not nothing." "It doesn't feel like enough." Her mother reached over, taking her hand. "It will. Someday." Amora wanted to believe her, but all she could feel was the absence, the hollow space where Kane used to be. The first week was the hardest. Amora moved through her days like a ghost. She played with her daughter, cooked meals she didn't eat, smiled when she was supposed to smile. But inside, she was screaming. At night, she'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd survived. If maybe, somehow, he'd fought his way out. But deep down, she knew. She'd heard the gunfire stop. She'd felt the finality of that moment. He was gone. The news confirmed it 2 weeks later. A small article buried in the back of the paper. Asterisk gang violence leaves multiple dead. Asterisk it listed the casualties. Among them, Kane Volkov, 36, alleged crime boss. No family. No survivors. Amora read it 3 times before the word sank in. Asterisk no family. Asterisk. But he had her. He'd had her. She folded the paper and tucked it away in a drawer, unable to throw it out but unable to look at it anymore. Before we close this chapter, take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Every small gesture helps the next story find its way to you. Slowly, painfully, life began to resemble normal. Amora got her job back at the diner. Her boss didn't ask where she'd been, just handed her an apron and pointed to the coffee pot. The routine helped. The monotony. The familiar faces of regulars who wanted nothing more than eggs and toast and mindless small talk. Her daughter adjusted too. She stopped asking where her mama had gone, stopped having nightmares about the gas leak that had never been real. Children were resilient that way. They bent instead of breaking. Amora envied her. 3 months after that night, a package arrived. No return address. No note. Just a small wooden box, carefully wrapped. Amora opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a book. Old, worn, the kind Kane used to read. And tucked between the pages was a letter. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. Asterisk Amora, asterisk. Asterisk if you're reading this. Then I didn't make it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. For dragging you into my world. For not being strong enough to let you go. For loving you when I had no right to. Asterisk. Asterisk I've made arrangements. The money in the account I opened for you should be enough to take care of you and your daughter for the rest of your lives. No strings. No danger. Just freedom. The kind I could never give you while I was alive. Asterisk. Asterisk I don't regret meeting you. I don't regret any of it. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, even if I was the worst thing that happened to you. Asterisk. Asterisk live. Amora. Live the life you were meant to have. Be happy. Love someone who deserves you. And if you can, sometimes, when the night is quiet, remember me. Asterisk. Asterisk yours. Asterisk. Asterisk C. Asterisk. Amora pressed the letter to her chest and wept. A year passed. Then, too, the pain didn't disappear. It never would. But it dulled. Became something she could carry instead of something that crushed her. She learned to smile without forcing it. To laugh at her daughter's jokes. To wake up in the morning and not immediately think of him. Most mornings, anyway. She used the money carefully. Paid off her debts. Bought a small house. Enrolled her daughter in a good school. Built the kind of stable, quiet life she'd always wanted but never thought she'd have. And on quiet nights, when her daughter was asleep and the house was still, she'd take out that letter and read it again. Asterisk remember me. Asterisk. As if she could ever forget. 5 years after that night in the alley, Amara was at the park with her daughter when she saw him. Not Kane. She knew better than to hope for that. But a man who looked like him. Same build. Same way of standing, like he owned the ground beneath his feet. Her heart stuttered. She took a step forward, then stopped. It wasn't him. Of course it wasn't him. But for a moment, one brief, foolish moment, she'd let herself hope. The man turned, and their eyes met. He nodded, a small acknowledgement, then kept walking. And Amora understood. Kane was gone. He'd been gone for years. But the mark he'd left on her life, on her heart, was permanent. He'd changed her, made her stronger, taught her what it meant to be loved without conditions, even if that love had come wrapped in danger and darkness. She'd survived him, and in surviving, she'd honored him. Her daughter called to her from the swings, and Amara turned away from the stranger, back to her real life, the one she'd built from the ashes of the old. Asterisk live, Amara, asterisk he'd written. So she did. 10 years later, her daughter was 17. Beautiful, smart, strong in all the ways Amara had never been at that age. They were having dinner when the girl asked, "Mom, do you ever think about my father?" Amara set down her fork. "Sometimes. Why?" "Just curious. You never talk about him." "There's not much to say. We were young. It didn't work out." "Do you wish it had?" Amora thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "If things had been different, I wouldn't have you. And you're worth everything." Her daughter smiled. "Even the hard parts." "Especially the hard parts." Later that night, Amora stood on her back porch, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Kane was buried. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe there'd be no body, no funeral, just a name in a newspaper and a memory that refused to fade. She closed her eyes and let herself remember. The feel of his hands, the sound of his voice, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Asterisk remember me, asterisk he'd written. "Always," she whispered to the night. And in the silence that followed, she swore she could feel him there. Not as a ghost, not as a haunting, just as a presence, warm and steady, like he'd never really left. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe love like that didn't end, even when everything else did. She stood there for a long time, wrapped in memory and moonlight, before finally heading inside. The past was gone, but she carried it with her still, woven into every choice, every breath, every moment of the life she'd built. She'd helped a wounded man on a highway once, and that night, a convoy had blocked her gate. Everything after had been chaos, pain, love, loss, but also survival, strength, a future she'd fought for and earned. And in the end, maybe that was enough. Amora turned 43 on a Tuesday in October. Her daughter threw her a small party, just the two of them, a homemade cake, candles that dripped wax onto the frosting. They ate ice cream and watched old movies, and when her daughter kissed her cheek and told her she loved her, Amara felt that familiar ache of gratitude mixed with grief. Everything good in her life was shadowed by what she'd lost. But she'd learned to live with shadows. She'd learned a lot of things, actually. How to balance a checkbook, how to fix a leaking faucet, how to wake up every morning and choose to keep going, even when part of her wanted to stay in bed and never face the world again. She'd learned that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about picking up the pieces and gluing them back together, even when the cracks still showed. And they did show. They always would. Her daughter left for college that fall. Amara drove her to campus, helped her move into her dorm, tried not to cry when they hugged goodbye. She made it to the car before the tears came, sitting in the parking lot with her hands on the wheel, sobbing like she hadn't in years. Not because she was sad, because she was proud, because her daughter had grown into someone remarkable, someone brave and kind and whole. Because Kane would have been proud too. She drove home through the afternoon light, the radio playing songs she didn't hear. The house was too quiet when she arrived, too empty. For the first time in decades, she was truly alone. She made herself dinner, cleaned the kitchen, sat on the couch with a book she couldn't focus on. And then, because she couldn't help herself, she went to the bedroom and opened the drawer where she kept his letter. The paper was yellowed now, soft from being handled so many times. She unfolded it carefully, her fingers tracing the words she'd memorized years ago. Asterisk live, Amara.asterisk. She was. But God, it was lonely sometimes. A month after her daughter left, a man knocked on her door. It was late, past 9, and Amara almost didn't answer. But something made her check the peephole, and when she saw who it was, her breath caught. She opened the door slowly. "Can I help you?" The man was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and tired eyes. He looked at her like he recognized her, though she was certain they'd never met. "Amora," he asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Victor. I worked for Kane." The name hit her like a punch. She gripped the doorframe, her knees suddenly weak. "I don't. Please, I just need 5 minutes." She should have said no, should have slammed the door and called the police. But instead, she stepped aside and let him in. He sat on her couch, looking uncomfortable, like he didn't belong in her neat, normal living room. Amara stayed standing, her arms crossed. "Why are you here?" she asked. Victor pulled an envelope from his jacket. "He asked me to give you this. If..." He hesitated. "If he didn't make it." Amora stared at the envelope. "That was over a decade ago." "I know. I'm sorry it took so long. Things were complicated, but I made a promise, and I always keep my promises." He held out the envelope. Amora took it with shaking hands. "There's more," Victor said. He left instructions, money, resources, things he wanted you to have, if you ever needed them. "I've been maintaining it all, waiting for the right time." "Why now?" "Because your daughter's gone to college. Because you're alone again. Because..." He looked at her with something like kindness. "Because he wanted to make sure you'd always be taken care of, even when he couldn't do it himself." Amora's eyes burned. "He's really gone, isn't he?" Victor nodded. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I already knew." He stood, moving toward the door. "If you need anything, anything at all, there's a number in the envelope. I'll answer." "Why would you do this?" For me. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Because he loved you, and in all the years I knew him, I never saw him love anything else. Then he left, and Amara was alone with the envelope. She sat down, her hands trembling, and opened it. Inside was another letter. His handwriting. Familiar, strong, slightly slanted. Asterisk Amara, asterisk. Asterisk, I hope you never read this. I hope I'm still alive when you find it, and we're somewhere safe, and I can tell you all of this in person. But if you're reading it, then I'm gone, and there are things you need to know. Asterisk. Asterisk first, I'm sorry. I know I already said that, but I'll say it again. I'm sorry for every tear, every nightmare, every moment of fear I caused you. You deserved better. You deserved the world. I gave you war instead. Asterisk. Asterisk second, thank you. For stopping on that highway. For saving my life. For loving me when I didn't deserve it. You made me believe, for a little while, that I could be something other than what I was. You made me want to be better. Asterisk. Asterisk third, I need you to know that everything I did, every choice I made after I met you, was about keeping you safe. Even when it seemed cruel. Even when it hurt. I would have burned the world down to protect you. I hope you know that. Asterisk. Asterisk Victor will give you access to everything I left behind. Money, property, resources. Use it however you want. Build the life you dreamed of. Give your daughter everything. Be happy. Asterisk. Asterisk, and if you can't be happy, at least be at peace. Asterisk. Asterisk, I don't know what happens after we die. I don't know if there's anything beyond this. But if there is, if there's some place where souls go, I'll be waiting for you. Not because I expect you to hurry. Take your time. Live a long, full life. Love again. Laugh. Grow old. Asterisk. Asterisk, but when it's finally your time, I'll be there. I promise. Asterisk. Asterisk, until then, know that you were my light in the darkness. My reason. My everything. Asterisk. Asterisk, forever yours. Asterisk. Asterisk Kane. Asterisk. Amara read it 3 times before the tears came. This time, they weren't tears of grief. They were something else. Something softer. Bittersweet. She folded the letter carefully and pressed it to her chest, closing her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. And she meant it. If stories like this linger in your heart long after they end, don't leave just yet. Like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below, and let the next story find you when the night grows quiet again. The money changed things. Not all at once. Amara was careful, methodical, the way she'd learned to be during those long months of surviving. She paid off the rest of the house, set up a trust for her daughter, donated to causes that mattered, the kind of things that would have made Kane roll his eyes but secretly approve of. And then, slowly, she let herself dream again. She'd always wanted to write. Stories had lived in her head since childhood, but life had always gotten in the way. Bills, work, survival. But now, with her daughter away and time stretching out before her, she finally gave herself permission. The first story she wrote was about a woman who stopped on a highway, who helped a stranger, whose life was never the same. It wasn't his story, not really. It was hers, the parts he'd never known, the fear, the loneliness, the way love had crept up on her like dawn, slow and inevitable and impossible to ignore. She called it Asterisk, the Gilded Cage. Asterisk. It took her 2 years to finish. 2 years of late nights and deleted drafts and moments where she wanted to give up because the memories were too raw, too real. But she kept going, driven by something she couldn't name. When she finally typed the end, she sat back and cried. Not from sadness, from release. The book found a small publisher, then a larger one, then, somehow, an audience. People wrote to her, strangers who said they'd felt the same things, lived through their own versions of impossible love and loss. They thanked her for putting words to the ache, for making them feel less alone. Amora read every letter, answered the one she could, and slowly, Tentatively, she started to believe that maybe her pain had purpose after all. Her daughter called one night, her voice bright with pride. "Mom, I saw your book in the campus bookstore. Everyone's reading it." "Really? Really? I'm so proud of you." Amora's throat tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart." Is it true? The things in the book?" Amora had expected this question eventually. "Some of it." "The man, was he real?" "Yes." A pause. "Did he really love you that much?" Amora thought about Kane's hands, gentle despite their violence. His voice, rough and careful. The way he'd looked at her like she was something sacred. "Yes," she said softly. "He did." Her daughter was quiet for a long time. Then, "I'm glad you had that, Mom. Even if it hurt." "Me too, baby. Me too." Life settled into something resembling contentment. Amora wrote more books, traveled to places she'd only dreamed of, made friends, real ones, people who knew her now and didn't ask too many questions about her past. She even dated, briefly, a kind man, a teacher, someone safe and steady, but it didn't last. Not because he wasn't good, he was, but because her heart wasn't fully in it. Part of her was still holding vigil for a ghost. She didn't mind. Some loves weren't meant to be replaced. On quiet evenings, she'd sit on her porch and look at the stars, the same way she used to with her daughter. And sometimes, when the wind moved through the trees just right, she swore she could feel him there, not haunting her, just present, a warmth in the cold, a steady heartbeat beneath the silence. Asterisk, "I'll be waiting for you." Asterisk, he'd written. "Not yet," she'd whisper back. "I'm not done here yet." And she wasn't. Her daughter graduated college, got a job, fell in love with a good man who made her laugh. When she got engaged, she asked Amora to help plan the wedding. They sat at the kitchen table, sorting through invitations, and her daughter suddenly looked up. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "The man from your book, the one you loved. If you could go back, if you could choose not to stop that night, would you?" Amora set down the invitation she was holding. It was the question she'd asked herself 1,000 times over the years. The answer had changed, evolved, deepened. "No," she said finally, "I wouldn't change it. Even though it hurt. Especially because it hurt. That pain taught me I was capable of more than I thought. More love, more strength, more life, and it gave me perspective. It made me appreciate the quiet moments, the boring ones, the ones where nothing dramatic happens, because those moments are just as precious." Her daughter reached across the table, taking her hand. "You're amazing, you know that." Amora smiled. "I'm just your mom." "No. You're more than that. You're a survivor, a fighter, and someday, when I have kids, I'm going to tell them all about you." The tears came then, unstoppable and cleansing. "I love you so much." "I love you too, Mom." The wedding was beautiful. Amora sat in the front row, watching her daughter say her vows, and felt the full weight of time. How much had changed, how much she'd survived, how much love could exist alongside grief. At the reception, her daughter pulled her onto the dance floor. They swayed together, and Amora closed her eyes, letting herself feel it all, the joy, the sorrow, the gratitude. "Thank you," her daughter whispered, "for everything, for never giving up, for showing me what strength looks like." Amora held her tighter. "Thank you for giving me a reason to keep going." Later, when the dancing was done and the guests were filtering out, Amora slipped outside for air. The night was clear, the stars bright overhead. She thought about Kane, wondered what he'd think of all this, of the life she'd built, of the woman she'd become. Would he be proud? Would he regret the price they'd paid? She'd never know. But standing there, under that vast sky, she chose to believe he would understand. That wherever he was, if he was anywhere at all, He'd see how she'd taken the wreckage he'd left behind and built something good from it. "I did it," she said to the night. "I lived, just like you asked." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, and for just a moment, it sounded like a voice. *I know to*. Amora,